And hello and welcome to Arts and Entertainment. I'm Deborah Gilbert, your host. And again, as always, thanks so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed the show. Well, we're going to highlight a guest that was here last year. And we're going to highlight Elane Carroll, the CEO of the New Haven Symphony, which is based in New Haven, Connecticut. And Elane, thank you so much for being here. So nice to have you.
Oh, thank you, Deborah. It's great to be back.
You know, what I always like to do for the audience is reintroduce the guest to them so that they know who they're listening to. So why don't you take us back into your background? Tell us about yourself.
Certainly. Elane Carroll, I'm the CEO of your New Haven Symphony Orchestra, 128 years young here in the New Haven community. Began my career as a flute major, that was my undergrad, but went on to study performing arts administration. And I've worked throughout my career at either orchestras or chamber music festivals. Came to New Haven, met my husband here, and have worked at the New Haven Symphony for 11 years now.
How has it been? Did you think that you would stay as a performer? You had mentioned in our, I did my research and I watched our interview from last year. You were still performing, or are you just doing the symphony as management?
Well, I don't perform with the symphony. I'm only a manager at the symphony, but I perform for fun. I play at my church, and I still pick up the occasional gig. But our symphony musicians rehearse hours a day, and with a full-time administrative job, I don't have the time for that. So they are really super specialists who spend a lot of time rehearsing and perfecting the music that they play with us.
People will hear CEO. Tell us what are some of the duties that you need to do in a day. What are your responsibilities?
Well, I will say one thing I like about my job, it's never the same day twice. Sometimes we're working on programming. I have a wonderful partner, our music director, Alistair Neal. We work very closely together, trying to come up with music that really reflects the greater New Haven community. We don't want to just be a symphony. We want to be the New Haven Symphony. Obviously fundraising. When you work for a charity like a symphony, we're always raising money, working with grantors and individual donors to help fund what we do, and to make sure that what we do is accessible and affordable for low-income families. Also do some strategy planning, where we'll be and what we'll be doing as we go forward. We work with a lot of community partners. We try to be a responsive organization to people in the community who want to make sure that all of our neighbors have access to really great music.
Tell us about the New Haven Symphony. We'll hear that title, but we don't know much about it. What is the history of the symphony?
It's a wonderfully robust history. We are the fourth oldest orchestra in the United States, which I think says something amazing about New Haven, that for a city this size to have a professional orchestra and to support it for such a long period of time tells you what a unique and cultured community that we have. We were founded by German immigrants who were coming here over 100 years ago and banded together. And there were some guarantors, leading families of the city, and also local music merchants and musicians who gathered together. So we really were a grassroots operation in the very beginning and have grown through time. We have wonderfully supportive, long-time supporters, multi-generation. I've met families who are the fourth generation to be subscribing to our orchestra. We have people in our audience who, the record is someone who subscribed for 86 consecutive years. His mother started bringing him when he was 6. So people discover us, they love us, and they stay with us for a very long time. And we're always looking to meet new people.
Tell us about your choice of music. How do you decide what you're going to play in a season?
So that, again, is something we work very, very closely with Alistair Neal on, and he's got a wonderfully sophisticated and marvelous sense of things that will appeal to the public. We'll do some fun things. We're doing that this weekend. We're playing a John Williams concert Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in New Haven, Hamden, and Shelton. And that's all those great movie scores, Indiana Jones and Jaws, and you can immediately hear the music. You picture Darth Vader striding through that doorway, and you know exactly what you're going to hear. So this weekend will be John Williams, very familiar, big orchestra, wonderful fun sounds. As last weekend, we had done something for children. We did our young people's concerts, which are short and short pieces and ways to introduce different instruments to the kids, and that had visuals, so there was a little travelogue that went along with it. We're going to finish the season big with 2 works by women composers, but then Debussy's La Mer, which is this beautiful, evocative, romantic piece about the ocean. So he puts together things that you discover a little something new. Also on that program is a piece by Elane, Boulanger, not a very well-known composer, but a young French woman who wrote some beautiful music and died tragically quite young, as well as La Mer, which people will be familiar with. So, and we have some terrific things we're plotting and planning for next season.
I was just going to ask you, what does your calendar look like for 2023, 24, 25? Do you plan that far away, any of your events?
We do. We usually plan very far in advance. We're catching up a little bit since COVID kept us out of our concert halls. And we've historically been at Woolsey Hall. We're not able to get back onto the Yale campus yet. But we have a marvelous new partner in Southern Connecticut State University. We're doing a full year residency there for the 22-23 season, which means we'll be able to do all 8 concerts of our classic series, which runs from October until May, at the beautiful Lyman Center on their campus. And it's a really professional hall, very comfortable, nearby parking. There's so many things that recommend it. If people haven't been out to the Lyman Center, I think they'll be surprised at what a jewel of a performing arts venue we have right in New Haven.
One of the things we talked about last year was COVID. How are things doing this year with the orchestra? You're playing in public again.
We are playing in public again, and so glad to be back. We've really put a priority on safety throughout the pandemic, both for our musicians and for our audiences. So when I spoke with you a year ago, we were planning an outdoor concert series, and we played down on the waterfront where there was marvelous air exchange, very, very windy, but we were able to safely have spaced audiences by playing outdoors. Comes with its own challenges. So we're very glad to be back in the concert hall, but everyone remains masked. Everyone's vaccinated who comes to our concerts, or they test the day that they come out. Our musicians have very strict safety rules. So as far as we're aware, we haven't had any problems with transmission in the symphony audience at all. We do everything we can to make sure people feel able to come and feel very, very safe. And we understand that, especially with people with health challenges, we work closely with them so that they can feel safe at our halls.
There are probably many musicians that are trying desperately to play with an orchestra. How does somebody submit themselves to you for consideration?
So we are a rostered orchestra, so the seats are filled by people over a period of time. We did have a lot of violin seats open up during the COVID epidemic. Some people moved to different parts of the country, for instance. So we have 6 openings in our violin section. And if people go to our website, newhavensymphony.org, there is information on our auditions that are coming up. We will audition for violins in May. We expect to audition for 1 seat each in cello and viola next fall. And we have an opening for bass trombone, if you know any bass trombone players. So it's a screened audition with the professional members of the symphony as adjudicators on the other side of the screen. We just always remind people that we're looking for people who are playing full-time professional. This isn't a side gig or an avocational orchestra. This is a serious professional organization. So it's playing at a very, very high level.
You mentioned the website. What will the viewer find when they visit it?
We have a little bit of everything on our website, obviously, information on concerts that are coming up. If people want to go to newhavensymphony.org and click on the come to the concerts, they'll find a calendar. They'll find information, directions to our halls, things like that, and all the COVID safety policies. There is information on employment and performing opportunities. There's a very large section of the website dedicated to education. Education is a big part of what we do. And one of the things that we had to respond to during the epidemic was all of our school partners, who were in 42 different school districts, had needs for their students to go online and learn things. So we have a tool for helping students decide what is the best instrument for me. We developed that for the New Haven public schools early in COVID, and it really took off. It's been used by people all over the world. We're on every continent except Antarctica, so we keep trying to find someone at that South Pole station to try it, so we can say we've conquered the world with our instrument selection tool. We have resources for teachers all the information on our education programs, and a podcast, which was originally designed just as a learning tool for our audiences. But during COVID, it was transformed so that the first season is sort of an introduction to music class. And it's set up through Google to have quizzes after each podcast, so teachers can sign up. They get the results of the quizzes, and we were used as a high school and college appreciation class all during COVID, including at the High School of the Performing Arts down in New York City, the famous FAME school. So we were glad to get a little taste of fame with that particular online learning tool.
Technology. You had mentioned last time that it was a big part of what you were doing. I think you mentioned a YouTube channel, you're mentioning a podcast. Is that something that's here to stay? Is that important in what you're offering besides in-person concerts?
It is something that we grew and changed over the past couple of years. So we do have a New Haven Symphony YouTube channel that has videos, everything from interviews with our music director. During COVID, we actually did something called the Home Cooked Music Festival, and people donated videos to help us raise money for the community soup kitchen. Our pre-concert lectures now are taking place online, so we post them in advance, and people, instead of having to come a little early for the concert, can review them online in advance. And then we do have concert footage that people can enjoy there as well. The podcast, we are now on season 3, and those are available on a couple of different music sites. And also, if you go to the education page on newhavensymphony.org, there's a way to get through to the podcast, and you can go through those 3 different seasons. So the things that were immensely popular with people during COVID, we're trying to hang on to. And it's been really gratifying as we come back. We're finding a lot of people in our audiences are brand new to us. They discovered us online, and they're coming out to see us perform live, which is, of course, what we do best.
We're going to take a break. I'm Deborah Gilbert. You are tuned in to Arts and Entertainment. We'll be right back.
Community TV, your neighborhood TV.
Publicly funded and a reliable partner for cable companies nationwide, it provides transparent coverage of local and state government, education, and public programming.
A digital town green that can be watched anywhere, anytime, and on any device.
Watch us on today's high-tech distribution methods.
Community TV in Connecticut.
Local,
unfiltered,
reliable, and yours.
Hey Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry, I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Do clouds take naps?
I couldn't tell you.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
And welcome back to Arts and Entertainment. I'm Deborah Gilbert, your host. I hope you're enjoying the show. Well, we continue on our conversation with Elane Carroll, the CEO of the New Haven Symphony. And Carroll, one of the things I want, pardon me, Elane, I've got your last name in my brain. Let me do Elane first. Internships. Is there a way for somebody to get involved with the organization?
We love working with interns, and we have a very robust internship program. Obviously, I would say the performing arts, but also the not-for-profit sector doesn't work if we're not training up new leaders for tomorrow. So we work with a lot of the universities in the area, have paid internships sometimes through the universities. We also have unpaid internships. Usually those start with high school or college students. And our organization does a little bit of a lot of things that big corporations would do, things like marketing, finance, general administration, and we can do internships in those areas. And then we have some that are very specific to the not-for-profit field, things like our development team, which raises money, and our education team. A lot of people come here with an interest in how education and the arts can impact children. And we have an on-board process, and they can do it for a semester and get credit. We've had people do that at everything from high school up through the graduate level. We have summer internships. And again, there's information on that on our website under the education page. We also have a robust program to address the lack of diversity in our field. And we have fellowships for underrepresented musicians, board members, arts administrators, and a conductor.
I'm thinking of internships, and I'm thinking about paid positions that are there at the orchestra. How does somebody present themselves to you to be able to be a part of your organization?
If they're interested in working here, we do have an employment tab on the website. We are members of something called the League of American Orchestras. So if people are interested in working specifically at an orchestra, it's americanorchestras.org. And that's where all of the listings in our field tend to go up. We also use things like Indeed. It's a job site, but specifically for not-for-profit workers. And that's where we put out information when we have job openings available. We don't have anything open right now, but we're always eager to hear from people who are interested in the field. And we work very closely with, for instance, the Art Council, the Neighborhood Music School. So we do have a sense of what's going on in the music community here in the region.
Does the symphony get to travel at all outside of the New Haven area?
We travel a little bit. We're getting back to that now that COVID is quieting down a bit. We're planning a trip to Essex next January. That concert's in January. So we'll sometimes take a concert that we're performing nearby in New Haven. Our main venues are in New Haven, Hamden, and Shelton. But sometimes we will go to other towns to perform. We did something at Christmas time at the beautiful new community theater at Sacred Heart University. That's something we do every Christmas. We've done work with the Madison First Congregational Church. So we do travel around different places where we can find a partner who's interested in presenting us.
One of the things you mentioned last year, probably due to COVID, is that you had a chamber ensemble that was going to be playing. Do you have different sections that play, or are you always a full orchestra?
So, we're always eager to partner with people in whatever way makes the most sense for them. The reason we were focusing on chamber ensembles at this time last year is it was the only way to keep people safe, especially with things like winds and brass. The players needed to be 12 feet away from each other, so you can't get more than 5 or 6 people together to perform when you need to be that much spaced out. We actually looked at the possibility of doing a recording of the orchestra if we were to safely space them at the height of COVID, and we discovered that we would need a soccer field. We were looking at an indoor soccer field as a place to record, but by the time we had them all laid out that far apart, they were too far apart to hear each other well, so we weren't able to do the recording. It just didn't make sense. But during COVID, it made sense to focus on smaller ensembles. And our concerts at Canal Dock, which were very well received, featured ensembles of up to about 9 players. But we are so happy to be back full force. I know this weekend we've got 73 people playing the John Williams music, great big orchestras. And there's nothing for me like the sound of a big orchestra and just that rattle and hum you get in your chest when a really big sound wave hits you from a beautiful group of people playing music together.
One of the things you had mentioned, and you've mentioned a little bit today, are the youth. Is education for the young people something that's a priority for the organization?
It's a big part of our mission, and it has been for over 80 years. We actually would have had our 90th anniversary of our Young People's Concert this month, except we missed the last 2. So we were very excited to bring that back last weekend. We often travel around the state and have school groups come in. The schools weren't quite ready for that this year. So we did performances on the weekend that were free and welcomed family to bring their kids so that they could have their introduction to the orchestra. Those were so well received. We're hoping to hang on to that next year as a plus and, so much I think of what we've learned in COVID are the things we want to hold on to so we can go back to our regular work plus do things that worked really well. So we'll hopefully have that free concert in New Haven as well next year, but be back into the schools as well. And our education director is a wonderfully creative professional. We work with a lot of different school districts to design things that work well for them. And we have programs that can start with toddlers. We work with the libraries, for instance, on their storytime programs. We have programs for elementary school kids. We have a very special program for young composers that's for high school students. So we like to say we take people from cradle to grave with wonderful music, and we can design things for schools and sometimes even work with them to get grants to help pay for the services from our professional musicians. So always looking for new partnerships, and people can reach out to me at newhavensymphony.org or our education department if they're interested in those kind of projects.
That's a very good question. If there is somebody that's out there that would like to partner with you, what does that mean?
It can mean a lot of different things. When I talk about going down to the Sacred Heart University Community Theater, they have a beautiful new space. We've worked closely with Sacred Heart over the years, and they bring us down for a Christmas program. They like to do a thank you for their donors at Christmas time. So they hire the Symphony, and we plan far in advance to include them as part of our Christmas concert tour, and we bring a project down there every year, and they have a chance for the community to buy tickets, but also as a thank you party for their donors. So you can take one of our concerts and present it in your community. With the schools, we do everything from offer these creating musical readers programs, which are for really little kids. We have units that can help enrich curriculum. So for instance, we have a curriculum on how Black music has inspired real advances in music in the American culture. That can be offered as part of the social studies curriculum or the music curriculum. Teaches things like the influence of Motown, gospel, and hip hop. Kids love that program, and the musicians are specifically trained to go into the schools and teach that. Can be done remotely, or we're getting back to doing it in person. We have instrument discovery zones. Those haven't quite come back because of COVID yet, where we bring the instruments in and the kids can try them. So if people have a need, we usually can find a way to fill it. We have 65 really incredibly talented instrumentalists, so we can do just about anything that people think of in the instrument world.
That's a very good question. 65 instrumentalists. Is your symphony 65 instrumentalists? Does that make a symphony? Or you had mentioned 73. Does it vary?
It can vary. So 65 is our rostered members, all of the core instruments. When you get into something like John Williams, there's often a lot of extra percussion. For instance, we're doing a marvelous piece from the movie Catch Me If You Can. People don't necessarily think of that as one of the big Williams scores, but it has this great 60s vibe, very jazz inflected. So we're working with the jazz saxophonist, Wayne Escoffery. He's performing as a soloist. And then Aya Kaminaguchi Singer, who is our principal percussionist, is also doing the marimba solo on that. So if she's out in front doing a marimba solo, we'll have extra percussion that we hire. Saxophones are something extra that we hire. They're not a regular part of the roster, but we call them when we need them. There's a very big keyboard part. If you think about all that wonderful Harry Potter music with those little crystalline tunes, that's a celeste. So our keyboard player will be playing both celeste and piano, which Williams writes very big parts for keyboards. So you'll be hearing our symphony keyboardist. He's not a regular member of that 65-member roster, but he joins us whenever we have keyboard parts. So that's why we need those extra 8 people to fill out some of those extra things.
There might be people out there that write orchestras themselves. They're musicians and would like to present themselves to you. Do you take on new pieces to do as a performance, or are they already well known?
No, we actually have a very strong commitment to new American music. For an orchestra our size, to have a composer in residence is pretty unusual, and we've had one consistently for the past 10 years. We're currently working with Joel Thompson, who's an incredible emerging voice in the music world. As I said, he just did this opera down at the Houston Grand Opera. We were interested in working with him because he's got a really singular viewpoint on music. And when we called to reach out to him, I thought I was calling Atlanta, where he's from, but it ended up he was over on Everett Street because he's studying at the Yale School of Music to get his Doctor of Musical Arts. So it was a wonderful coincidence that he happened to be here in New Haven. So he runs our Young Composers Project. He's written a couple of commissions for us. We're going to premiere another one with our opening night next October. It's going to feature a new work of Joel's, and he'll be with us for this season and next season as well. As I said, we had the composition contest, and we were happy to see, we did get a few songs in, and we did end up having a song winner. But we did have young composers who sent us fully orchestrated symphonies, and one of those was just premiered on March 18th by the orchestra, a young man named Damian Simerson, very talented student, and he's not even in the music department at Yale. He's studying something else, but he's from a musical family and wrote a really lovely short piece as a tribute to the fallen from COVID. So we do accept scores, and we'll take a look, and if it's something that our music director feels is a really terrific piece of music, we'll program it.
Funding and grants. How do you support yourself financially?
Funding and grants are a big part of how we support ourselves financially. We want to keep tickets affordable. and that means we have to raise a lot of money. We have a lot of terrific longtime supporters in our audience who contribute to our annual fund. We have local corporations that we work with. For instance, United Illuminating has a program called Lighting Up the Arts, and it doesn't just benefit your symphony, but it benefits most of the larger arts organizations in town to help fund keeping the lights on is a little bit of play on words, but they're wonderful supporters of our work so that we can invite the community and keep prices low. I also have to give a lot of credit to the government over the past 2 years. They've been very generous with public funding to help support the arts as we've been through a really difficult period, and programs like the payroll protection program and the shuttered venues program, which specifically helped organizations like ours who could not perform during COVID. We received tremendous support from the government over the past couple of years.
Well, we are starting to run out of time. Any closing thoughts for the viewers?
Well, if people aren't that familiar with us, I hope they come and see what we do best, which is come to the concert hall. We're in New Haven on Friday, Hamden on Saturday, Shelton on Sunday, and we perform about once a month. If you go to newhavensymphony.org, you'll find a calendar, and we'd love for you to come out and hear us in concerts. We're so excited to be back in front of audiences again.
Well, congratulations, and thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, Deborah. Thanks for having me on.
And to all of my viewers, if anyone is interested in volunteering on the program, or if you think you might be a great guest, I'd love to have you. Please contact me at artsandentertainment@mail.com. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the show. Thank you again for tuning in. Have a super day. I'll see you next time.